To me, smart cities mean the application of information technologies that, generally speaking, deal with improving the efficiency of cities, you know, on a day-to-day basis in the short term. So this is what we would call the narrow definition of smart cities. And then in the broader sense, smart city really relates to any aspects of urban organisation that might be improved using better data, better computation, but also more smart intelligence applied to the city, which may or may not be digital in that sense. So the narrow definition is probably digital, relating to routine services. We mainly deal with two or three aspects of smart cities. We're particularly interested in questions of mobility and the big data that is associated with improving and understanding mobility. So much of this big data is sensing data. So in other words, sensors are embedded either in buildings or people through phones, etc. And this produces data related to mobility and travel on a second-by-second basis. And we're quite interested in new sources of data in cities using crowdsourcing. In other words, basically asking the broader population to respond to certain key issues. And our particular focus is always spatial issues, so variation in space is really quite important in our particular context. The main issue, I think, is the delivery of information in a real-time context. Information that traditionally was delivered much more slowly, more infrequently, and involved citizens actually going to some place to get the information. There are some big issues in this. So, for example, one issue that relates to the delivery of information is privacy and confidentiality. Another issue is who has access to the appropriate technology. So obviously very young kids don't have access to that sort of technology, although school children increasingly have got access to smartphones. Older people tend not to be as information technology savvy, but this is something that will probably pass. Okay, well, in a number of different directions. I mean, one, I think we'll see a lot of improvement in transit, right? We'll see more routine services and information about the quality of the service being delivered in real time in the city. And I think we'll see some quite dramatic developments in terms of cars. I mean, I think it's not before long all cars will be equipped with GPS, and to some extent they will again crowdsource the other cars on the road to find out traffic conditions, that kind of thing. The other big feature, I think, is energy. So I think we'll see quite dramatic developments in terms of the use of energy in the home in this particular context. The one feature, I think, of the energy issue is that some studies suggest that if people are able to improve the energy use in the home, they will use not less energy but more. So typically in Britain, people don't heat their bedrooms or upstairs rooms in a two-storey house. They don't heat the upstairs traditionally, but if they get better energy, if they're paying less for their energy, then they may use that money to heat the upstairs. So there is some sense that things are, that the improvements will be improvements in the quality of living as well as actually potentially reductions in the costs, basically. Okay, well, obviously this question of the smart grid is quite important. That, of course, the smart grid is something that, in a way, is in the background, really. There are many energy grids, I think, where electricity, for example, is delivered to users, where the electric grid is already smart. They're able to reallocate the movement of energy from different areas of the country or the city, for example, so that they can balance demand and supply. What will that actually do to change the form of the city in some sense? In other words, change the shape of the city. Will it have any impact on the shape of the city? Now, in the past, a lot of these services have not had a big impact. They've tended to simply respond to the development of the city. The automobile has had the biggest impact on the shape of cities in this sense, and some building technologies. But the provision of energy has always lagged behind, really. You build a building and then energy is delivered to it. It's never been a major issue in terms of, certainly in countries like the UK, which are relatively developed, it's never been a major issue. It can be an issue, I think, where you have very rapid development. So in certain US cities, where you have rapid housing development, etc., just possibly the provision of this sort of infrastructure might make a difference to whether an area is developed or not, in a sense. So it does vary a little bit in that sense. So these are the most interesting things to me in terms of energy.